Hello, I'm Miss Bethany, and today I'm going to be talking about how to teach Spanish in your lower elementary classroom of Montessori. And for years I wanted to do this with the students because I have a bachelor's degree in Spanish, but I hadn't had the chance on my teaching journey yet because we either at a different school we had a Spanish teacher, or at my school I'm at now we had an Italian teacher. But we don't have Italian anymore, so I thought this was the perfect opportunity to do Spanish with my students. Now, one thing I noticed looking through or experiencing having a Spanish teacher or a different teacher in a classroom is that students don't like to learn a new language. They think it's boring, and I could understand why, because it's the frustration of these kids are still learning how to read in English or spell in English or talk in English with the correct grammar and just the syntax of the sentence and everything like that. So they're still figuring this out in English. So I would almost venture to say, after observing so much, that it's not interesting for their brain to learn Spanish. It's probably more complicating everything. It's more complicating things than anything. So in the first Spanish thing we had, and I remember having Spanish also as a child, and I also didn't like it, but then I went to major in it in college. So you never know the impact it's going to have, and plus it's better for students to start at a younger age with Spanish. So that's also a reason why at least you have to introduce it. That's the purpose of Montessori also, is to introduce them to so much more than, at least a little introduction to everything. Especially with the cultural subjects, we introduce them to a little bit of everything, and that's really cool. So with the first type of Spanish class, the lady had like a workbook, and then they would do a page. They would always start with like, my name is, how are you? And then they would do a page from their book. She wanted them to take it home and do a page. And that's originally kind of what I thought I would do, is like do a page, do a thing. And then when we had Italian, they had their own little notebook to like write the word and draw a picture. But in my mind, I was like, the kids are even so hesitant to write in English nowadays. Why are we going to make them write in a different language? Now, I understand, trust me, I'm a big proponent of learning a language as writing, reading, listening, and speaking. But for this age kids, we're just going to focus on the speaking part, which are 6 to 9 year olds, and also getting them active and not just sitting and listening to someone talk about it, or just sitting and repeating. So I'll show you what I did the first 3 weeks that we had Spanish. So first I just said, ¿Cómo estás? And a lot of kids know that one. And I just say, you say, estoy bien, estoy así, or, you could say bien, así, or mal. I try to have them say estoy bien or estoy mal. I'm good, or I'm doing well, I'm not doing so well, I'm fine in the middle. We went around and did all of those. And then we did the colors. Now, I only did a few colors, and I just have, let me see if I could be a little bit better down here. I only have a few cards. So I have like azul, and then, and usually I would have these laminated, but I don't have them. And then I also have the word card azul, and I would just put it down on the rug, and then we went through all the different colors. Okay, and then we did the numbers 1 to 9. I also have the cards, so I'll be like, and a lot of kids also know the numbers at least up to 10. So you just start with like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then they're laid out in front of them. So what I did is I picked a card. Let's just pick azul. I picked a card and I said in Spanish, I said, bring me, let's see, how about just cinco cosas azules. Bring me 5 things that are blue. So they went around the room and collected 5 items, and when they brought them back, let's say it was a libro. Oh, un libro. So it was a blue book. Or you could say libro azul. Or let's say it was a pencil. Lápiz azul, or lápiz de color azul, right? So you're having them bring you different things from around the classroom. And we know in Montessori, there's a lot of things, especially with red, blue, and green items, especially in the math. Or a lot of kids brought me like boxes, like the subtraction is like verde. So it's like caja verde. And I didn't say subtraction or anything, but it was just like a box. So it's like caja verde. And then they repeat. So they loved that. And typically I have, students that just don't want to learn a new language, and like I said at the beginning a little, and that's okay, but these students love that because they got to get up, and they also waited patiently. They're like, oh, what are they going to bring? And then we went through the different words together with the new things. So not only what we were focusing on was colors and numbers, something they were already a little bit familiar with, but we also got a little bit vocabulary from around the room of what the item that they brought me. So that was also very nice. So that was the first week. And then they kept asking for it throughout the week. They're like, we're going to have Spanish, right? I said, yes, we're going to do Spanish. They loved the game, which was interesting because I've never had that before where kids are asking for Spanish. So then the color and the number. So then the next week, I do Spanish on Friday afternoons. So the next week, I did up to 20, so 1 to 20, and then colors again. And we didn't do the same, I'm trying to remember, we didn't do the same thing where we went around. We did colors and numbers. I'm trying to remember exactly what we did. Colors and numbers. Oh, I also did their name that week, so me llamo or soy, whoever. Their name, so they practiced that, like como te llamas, and then me llamo, or some, there's different pronunciations of that in different cultures and places. So we did that, and then I'm trying to remember the game we did with that one. Oh, cuatro esquinas. So you probably play 4 corners in your classroom, maybe sometimes, I guess it depends, but you just pick 4 corners, and let's say we put the larger numbers, so we did like 11, 12, 13, y 14 in a corner. They pick one, and then someone calls out that number, and then if the group of kids at that number have to sit. That's a hard one because if the kids hate losing, then you will have some sad students, but they just have to get used to that one. But they do love that one too because they could walk and move around and practice those numbers. And then the next week we did this past week we did school supplies in Spanish, so the basic ones that they'll use around the room. And I'm going to be interesting today to see if I could use them and say well, we didn't do donde está yet, but I could be like, donde está tu lápiz? Where's your pencil? Or donde está el lápiz? Where's, it's still it's the pencil, but where's your pencil? Because that's something they always are losing or they need. So, or I could say bring me a pencil, for you to use. So we did these things, and I asked them for a number and the pencil thing. So I was just bring me 5 lápices, 5 pencils. And so they got 5 pencils and brought them back. And then they thought they were funny by bringing me more than the number. And now it's we would count together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, porque 6, so just trying to get them. And they think it's hilarious if they bring more, which is okay if they bring more, but also listening to the directions. But they also know the difference of, hey, this is wrong versus this one. So that was a fun one. And then we also did a color of one of the items on this list. So it was just introducing those. But so far it's been going well. I used to also have a whole shelf in here that had Spanish, cultural things, because I had this thing that was a package of English works and Spanish works, and I had printed them out, but no one ever picked them. Probably because I didn't emphasize them enough. But doing it as this is something you could do as a group, or just even if the students have Spanish at your school, have this be a little time filler. And even if you don't know Spanish, neither do the students. So as much, you know, sometimes you have students that speak Spanish, but I've noticed, especially at this age, even if they speak Spanish at home, they still love to practice it at school. So those are just some ideas and tips to do Spanish in your Montessori classroom or a regular classroom, of course. So that's great. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.